Riot announced a new patch, and there are some new crazy changes. In this video, we'll go over the major changes of the new patch. So they are doing a few item changes, and here I made all the calculations that you actually need to understand what is happening on these items. The only term that you need to learn here is gold efficiency, as you can see here, and it's needed to understand the efficiency of the item in terms of raw statistics. We're gonna get over that in a few. Anyways, let's start with the first item, which is Dawn and Dusk. We have a before and a after. So the before is what we currently have, and the after is how it's gonna look in the next patch. So they made a few changes, they nerfed the item. I said it many times, how this item had an insane gold efficiency. The gold efficiency of the item is 128% outside of the passive. What does this mean is that the item stats, generally just like what the item gives, was more gold efficient than the cost of the item. Because of that, everyone was just rushing the item, because not only it had more stats than what you actually paid for, but it also had one of the best actives in the game. You basically press once and you have some sort of Ginso effect, dealing a shit ton of damage. So they finally decided to decrease the stats of the item, and I'm pretty happy about that. But the bad thing is they actually added an heal on the effect. So I don't know about that. Probably the item kind of like feels the same from a technical perspective, but you have less raw stats, and the healing part is what scares me a bit. Who wants this? Bruisers with high base, armor, and MR will actually get a huge benefit out of the healing, because generally speaking, a character that has more resistances tends to use heal better. Imagine a 4k HP Malphite that just gets consistently healed. Every time you have to get through all the armor and MR all over again. But if the target that you're healing is quite squishy, even if you give him 3k HP, the guy's just like really squishy, so it's really easy to just like kill him back over again. So champions that have spells that manage to give a lot of armor right away, like the ultimate of Jax, will just make him really hard to get killed with such an item. And now we go to the static. It's always like that. Every time they change this item just becomes specifically way too strong, and those are the changes that they did. So before the patch, the item was costing 2k700 gold with a gold efficiency of 95%, and now after the patch, the gold cost increased by 300 gold, and the gold efficiency raised to 100%. Basically, they added the ability power. Ability power wasn't in the item. There was all attack damage, took off 5 AD from the item. Those are the stats that you can see in the presentation. The stats that you see here are the stats that you're gonna see after the changes. So you can see 40 attack damage, 45 ability power, attack speed, and movement speed. What's the big change of the item is that it now applies on hit effects, and this just makes the item crazy strong every single time they decide to do that. So I can't really speak without actually seeing how it performs from a technical perspective, but what I can tell you is that many ADCs would love to have this, especially champs that do not look to play crit, or champions that do want to push quite fast. Who wants this? I made an example, but in general, hybrid ADCs will get the most value out of it. You get AD, you get ability power, you get so much value out of having an item that gives hybrid stats as Varus or Kog'Maw. It's just an example, of course, but champions also like Yunara or Senna can get a huge advantage out of this item. But now we talk about the new starter items, and the new starter items are, I mean, honestly, it's something that I was waiting for, because Doran Blade was just like such a generic start for every ADC, and I didn't enjoy that. In fact, now they added Doran's Bow. Doran's Bow is a 400 gold item, so it's cheaper. That's interesting as well, because that means that you can actually look out for 2 potions instead of 1. And that's something to not underlook, especially from a competitive perspective or from a solo queue perspective. Having double potion on some matchups is something that I wouldn't skip on. The item has 6 attack damage, 50% attack speed, and 1.5% Omnivamp. I made the calculations here. As you can see, 1% Omnivamp is around 14 gold. And what kind of like carries the item is the attack speed. As you can see, it's 50% attack speed, 375 gold. Generally speaking, attack speed is not that important at the early stages of the game, so this item is not as strong as it might look. What makes it interesting again is the fact that you can buy 2 potions instead of 1, and the gold efficiency is still not bad at all. It's 161%, but the problem is that this, like the gold allocation, is all on the attack speed side. So once again, attack speed at the start of the game is not that crazy because ADCs naturally have a really low attack speed at the start of the game. Because of that, I wouldn't say that this item is incredibly strong, but the double potion could actually make some matchups that are usually really bad way more interesting. I just want to mention another thing. As you can see here, we have the gold efficiency of the other 3 items in the game: Doran's Blade, Doran's Ring, and Doran's Shield. Doran's Blade sits at 250%. It's a really consistent item, a lot of HP, and in general, I will say that this item is what's the most consistent pick anyways overall. The only difference is that Doran's Blade kind of shines when you wanna push, and Doran's Bow just could be a really good answer to a lane that you're not winning, and you can just have the double potion. Doran's Ring instead is one of the best items when it comes to gold efficiency because you also have an active, and it's 150% gold. 400 gold, you get 2 potions. It's just one of the best starter items ever made, even after the new ones that came out. Doran's Shield has a really low gold efficiency, but that's because he has a crazy strong passive where you get just so much healing out of getting it. So it's one of the weakest from that perspective, but the gold value of the passive is really hard to like gather, so you shouldn't be worrying about that. Doran's Helm is another starter item. This starting item is quite weird, I will say. It's kind of crazy to see an item that gives armor and magic resistance as a starting item, because armor and magic resist tends to be really strong in the mid game, around mid game to late game, because you start stacking them up and you reach the point where armor and MR are just like perfectly valuable. 145 to 150 armor MR is the perfect angle, I will say. I don't really remember the calculation, but around 140, 150, it's where you get the most out of the damage reduction. So having better armor and magic resistance at the start, just like being a bit more tanky overall. I see this item as a pretty interesting choice, but I don't really see a place for it, because if you play a tank in topside, you play a Malphite, you play a Norn, and you just look out to get even more armor and magic resist, most of the times the problem of these champions is that they aren't able to actually carry against those champions that naturally counter them. For example, a Gwen, right? Gwen does deal a shit ton of damage because there's a percentage damage, or because Camille deals true damage. Those champions just like naturally counter the tanks. So having such a starter item, even if the gold efficiency is quite good, might not actually be what you're looking out for. Because from a technical perspective, you're always going to itemize armor and MR. So having 10 armor or magic resistance in more in the mid game shouldn't actually change how tanky you feel. And I also do think that in the early game, if you have a matchup that you would naturally lose, it wouldn't change the course of how the matchup will go. So as we said, Doran's Bow, 161% gold efficiency, most of it on the attack speed, sadly, so it's not that strong from an early game perspective, at least for me. The Omnivamp is quite low, almost unperceivable, I will say. The 2 potions are what's really interesting. And then we have Doran's Helm, which should make maybe some tanks matchup a bit more interesting, I will say. I'm not really sure about how you should utilize that, because once again, if you have a tank matchup, maybe you want to unshake that. It's just like, it's a niche thing, and I wouldn't be talking about it too much. But now, here's the bomb. The new shoes that give Omnivamp. So this item is quite expensive. The gold cost of this item is 950 gold. It's quite expensive for what you have, because the movement speed is quite low. 45 movement speed is not the highest value we've ever seen on a base of boots. It's actually quite low. The base ones are 30 movement speed, and this one is 45. So I will say that it's objectively lower compared to other boots. Now, I don't remember exactly how much movement speed the other boots have, but it's generally speaking probably lower than the other ones. And we have Omnivamp, right? And we get 4% Omnivamp, the base is 4%, and once you kill an enemy champion, you get 1% Omnivamp forever, so you can stack it up till 10%. Now, stacking effects are always a problem. The problem of these boots is not the gold efficiency, right? Because without stacks, you can see it on the left, the gold efficiency of the item is 74%, so you're actually overpaying the price of the boots by a lot. And when you have it full stack, you basically are paying for the gold price of the actual boots. Once you have the full stacks of Omnivamp, the gold efficiency is 100%, meaning that you finally kind of like paid the price. So to actually get the most value out of these boots, you need to stack it up 6 times. But that's not the problem. Don't get baited on gold efficiency, because gold efficiency is what makes you understand if the item is overpaid or not. But Omnivamp in general, as a statistic, is one of the best statistics in League of Legends, because you have to think that healing is such a strong defensive layer. Every time they create something that heals, you're actually counting it as a defensive layer. and the only way to counter healing is either anti-heal or stuns. When stuns aren't in the game and when anti-heal feels bad, Omnivamp just becomes crazy good despite the gold value of the effective itemization. Just imagine an Aatrox with those Omnivamp boots on top of the Ravenous Hydra, on top of that, on top of Bloodthirster. These guys are gonna become unkillable. So anti-heal effects definitely need a revamp or something to actually incentivize people to actually play them. We are currently in a big meta where shields, heal, is just crazy high. You can see it bot side, we play barrier heal. You can see it on support side, everyone is playing Nami to heal his carry, Karma, shields, to actually just like max out shields everywhere and just give a shit ton of shields. From a technical perspective, everyone is just looking to outscale with those crazy effects. And some games are just like tanking because of it. What I don't like from a technical perspective is that some champions are completely busted and they could be because of these new boots. We have already seen it happening with the famous Mundo pick in the jungle, especially from a competitive perspective. We saw this big Mundo, 4k HP, just like being almost unkillable even if the enemy team had anti-heal. So I don't like when League becomes a stat checking game, because that means that you simply have to win at a specific timer or the enemy comp will naturally outscale without actually doing anything. So what are the conclusions of this patch from an ADC perspective? The pros are that new starter items make some champions actually feel more unique, because they also don't seem busted at all. You have some more choice and you can finally just like feel the early game a bit less scripted. You're not gonna pick Doran Blade and just say, okay, I lost the lane. You might actually just like spice it up a bit and make it a bit more interesting, I would say. The second thing is that because of static changes, there will be a lot of crazy strat changes, in my opinion, because the Senna changes and the fact that you can farm and the fact that you have some hybrid items in more on it options, that could make bot lane a bit more flexible and a bit more interesting. At least that's what I hope, but there's also another thing that we have to talk about. But the cons is what we have to talk about, because every time static went over 100% gold efficiency, guys, I saw this item being nerfed, especially from a competitive perspective and so much more. So we'll have to see if static survives the patch. I don't see it as possible, but I mean, as a DC player, you just have to catch the moment and just say, okay, if static is strong, I will just actually play it out. Even if I, generally speaking, don't like when botlane is an heavy meta, because when botlane becomes heavy meta, you actually see only two champions, and when you see two champions, that means that botlane is just not healthy at all. So as I said, static is gonna be permapicked because of push value on top of like some champion interactions, which actually could be crazy. Varus being really strong from an AD/AP perspective, not needing crit. Yunara dealing both AP and AD damage and also having the push at the start of the game will be crazy. Or Senna Static, which could be played both as a support ADC without actually losing out on golds. So all of these are pretty interesting strats, but they could also become so oppressive that everything else could become weak. Number 2, adding other healing items in such a heavy shield meta could cause balancing issues, but I think everyone knows that, right? If you count that no one in the game actually buys anti-heal unless you ask him, there's a problem, right? I think anti-heal should be something that you actually build into without actually feeling like you're losing something. It makes no sense that I'm actually countering something and I have to pay the price for it. Why does Lord Dominic have a really good passive and I have to drop it to actually get anti-heal? It makes no sense, right? You either make the same item with anti-heal and just like, you know, tune it up a bit. Anti-heal just like tends to be so hard to itemize, and it feels like it's not worth the price. They either, again, put it back to the famous 70%. I think it was 70% anti-healing, but they need to find a middle ground, because the tiny item gives 40% anti-heal, and when you close the full item, there's no actual value. So you're incentivized on buying the tiny shard, the tiny piece of item. Number 2, adding other shield items in such an heavy shield heal meta could cause balancing issues. Counting also the 0% incentivation for roles to buy anti-heal. What does this mean? So I personally played countless games in Aegilo and no one wants to buy anti-heal. The only role that can actually buy anti-heal are support players, and even if they can buy it, they tend to buy it third or fourth because there are better options in general. Because of that, ADC tends to be the role that has to buy it. You can actually drop Lord Dominic and go for the anti-heal item, but it still doesn't feel worth the price. So what I will say is that in general, every role should be able to buy anti-heal without actually feeling like they are delaying something else. That will make countering those type of champions way easier. I also do think that anti-heal is actually pretty bad into the game. 40% anti-heal just feels kind of outdated compared to how many healing effects and shield effects there are into the game. They definitely have to raise it by a bit. I will say 50% or 60% even. And then just like work from there and see if it's actually working out really well. Number 3, stun and RCC comps are needed in a heavy shield heal meta. It's terrible from a design perspective. What does this mean once again? If you are playing healing, the only way to stop someone from healing is to either stun him or do an AVCC on him. Most of the times, that's what you will actually look out for. You're gonna be able to kill the enemy Aatrox that has 45% lifesteal on auto because you stun him. Because if you don't stun him, the guy will just out you once and you will go back to full HP. That's the main issue. When you create a meta where lifesteal is literally strong as hell, you're just screaming for either a stun comp or something that has anti-heal. If anti-heal feels weak, then you are forced out on playing hard stun comps. If you're forced to play stun comps, every time you see a lobby where you don't have stuns and the enemy is healing, you will feel like you wanna quit the game. Because of lobby dodges not being available anymore, I will say that this is a really bad situation to actually be on, because seeing an enemy Mundo in the other side, knowing that anti-heal is weak, on top of the fact that you have no CCs, could cause games just to be lost in draft without even actually watching them. What do you think about this patch, guys? I hope you enjoyed this tiny summary. Let me know down in the comments if I made any mistake or you feel that I'm wrong from any side of that. And see you in the next video. Bye.